All righty. Hello, everybody, and thank you. We're really excited for today's Town Hall Tuesday. So without further ado, we are going to jump in. So our guest needs no introduction, but I'll do a quick one anyway. His name is Bob Burg. He is the co-author of the Gogiver and the Gogiver series. He's a renowned best-selling author and speaker, and we are so excited to have him here with us today. So Bob, first off, thank you for joining us. We know you're an in-demand guy and your time is so valuable, so we really appreciate you doing this.
Actually, I'm not that much in demand. Nobody cares.
It's
great with all of you. Thank you.
No, that's great. So let's, with that said, let's just jump right into it. So I think Jessica has a picture, but the Gogiver actually sits on the front desk in our office lobby as a reminder to all of us and our clients that to embrace the Gogiver way. It's a definitely a green standard, as we call it, at John Greene Realtor. And we love the Gogiver series, and it's mandatory reading for all new agents when they join our firm. So can you tell us a little bit about where the inspiration for the Gogiver came from?
Yeah, well, back in the mid-90s, I had my first book out. It was called Endless Referrals, and the subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. And it was really for business people, entrepreneurs, salespeople who, they knew they had a great product or service. They were proud of it. They understood the great value they brought to others, but they may not have been comfortable in the process of going out and developing and cultivating those relationships that led to people wanting to do business with them and refer them to others. And so it was a how-to book, a kind of a traditional how-to book. And throughout the years, I'd also read a lot of parables. Many by Ken Blanchard and Spencer Johnson and James Klassen and Og Mandino and just, and there's so many others, Chris Widener, and there's been a bunch of wonderful parables throughout the years. And I always enjoyed how in a very short story, and as you know, stories connect on a heart-to-heart level, and it's so much more impactful or I always found it impactful reading a story that had some great lessons and messages. And I thought, wouldn't it be terrific if we could take the basic premise of Endless Referrals, which is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, and put that into a parable form. So the first thing I sort of asked myself was, well, so what is it about a person that allows them to create these know, like, and trust relationships both quickly and sustainably? And really the overarching essence of that person is that they're a giver, that they're givers. They're always looking to give value to others. That is their focus. So it was very easy to come up with the name The Go-Giver. But the best thing I did for the book was to ask John David Mann, who was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for, and he was not nearly as well known as he is now, where he's the co-author and ghostwriter of choice for a lot of publishers and agents. But back then, only a small group of people really knew about his writing and storytelling brilliance. Well, fortunately, I was one of those people who knew. So I asked him to be the co-author and really the lead writer, because I'm a how-to person. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. John's a magnificent storyteller, and asked him to co-author it with me. And thankfully for me, he did. And so really, that's how the book came about. And then, it only took us a few months to actually write it, but it took about, I think we got 25 or 26 rejections from New York publishers before finally finding the perfect publishing partner for us, which was Portfolio, a division of Penguin Random House. And I would say that the premise of the Go-Giver, I'd say the premise of the entire series, really, but basically the premise is that shifting your focus, and this is really the key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. And that doing so is not only a pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. and not for some way out there woo-woo type of reasons. There's nothing magical or mystical about it. It's simply that when you're that person who can move the focus off of yourself and place it onto helping others, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in a relationship with you. They're much more likely to want to do business with you and refer and recommend you to others.
No, it's great. And I happen to, and I love that you kind of went into the reason why you chose a fictional story and the kind of the parable. You know, I thought of Ogmandino and the greatest salesman in the world as another great parable, right? And so when I read The Go-Giver, that's really what struck me was this what a great vessel for a really simple message. But I was actually listening to a podcast. You were on Jeff Shore's podcast, who I'm a big fan of.
Yes,
a
fantastic. One of the real true pros and classy people in the business.
Absolutely, and you guys got into, what I love about this story, and we were all sharing our stories about the Go-Giver. It's like, it starts with, it's a really easy read. It's 2 hours, or listen to it on audiobook, put it on 1.5 speed, and you can get through it in an hour, right? And the essence of it in the fictional form is just so great, because you guys were talking about Seth Godin, how he's incredible at writing 3 sentences and getting his point across, where you and I have to write 500 words, right? And
Exactly.
I'm just so thankful that you chose that vehicle and that vessel for a lot of people who aren't necessarily big readers. It just made it very accessible, and I think you've done something really cool with it. So thank you for putting that out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, Bob, and I want to give you some more kudos. When the COVID-19 pandemic started, we started our internal conversations about, how do we want to approach it? And when we looked out into the world, we saw a lot of scarcity mindset, and you don't have to think too much further than the empty shelves of toilet paper and Clorox wipes, right? And we really chose a default of, how can we help? Let's not get caught up in the scarcity mindset. Let's figure out how we can help. So we encourage our team to check in on people, their clients, right? Their past clients. We saw one of our giving partners, who's a local food pantry, was struggling to keep up with demand because the line was getting a little bit longer and volunteers were going down. So we decided to throw a really cool virtual concert, and it ended up raising over $15,000. So it's just, and I think a lot of that we can directly attribute to the lessons we learned in the Go-Giver, that focus on service of others above self. And I've heard you refer to it as being other focused. Can you explain why that concept is so important?
Yeah, and by the way, I think as you all did that as a team, it's because that is your culture. Okay, I mean that is who you are. And as Pindar told Joe, it's really, you give or you do these things, you act as you act. Not so much because it's a strategy, but because it's who you are. And because it's who you are, it's what you do. And as you know, character always comes before strategy, which always comes before tactics, right? And so your character is what really directs what's going to happen. So kudos to all of you for doing that. In terms of other focus, yeah. So why is that so important? Well, whenever I speak at a sales conference, one of the first things I'll say, and I don't say this in a dogmatic, he knows the answer kind of way, but just as I say it kind of as in the way that I know everyone will interpret it, which is just kind of being a funny type of truth. I'll say, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, and they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person, okay? They're going to buy from you, or they're going to list with you, they're going to do business with you. Why? Because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. That's human nature. And in the basically free market-based economy in which we operate, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. They do so by choice. And so in that type of economy where people have a choice, that's the only reason why they should do business with you or with me or with anyone else, because they believe they'll be better off by doing so. Now, this is a great thing, because it means that realtor who is other focused, who is focused on that other person, who's focused on bringing immense value to this relationship, that's the person who really creates that, what we call benevolent context for success. It's also why we say that money is an echo of value. Money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the focus must be on the other person, on bringing value to them. The money you receive is simply a very natural result of the value you've provided.
It's so great. And I love that. Money is the echo of value. And I'm glad you brought up when you're speaking at sales conferences, because I actually think, just kind of a follow-up question, I think the other focused piece is a great sales presentation tool as well. I know you and I both share a disdain for the word elevator pitch, but I've heard you talk about this. Can you talk about that concept of other focused presentation and the difference between features and benefits?
Yeah, and the word pitch to me should just be absolutely relegated to wherever one relegates a word that they plan to never use again. Unless you're talking about baseball, or I guess a roof has a pitch, or a singer has a pitch, or what have you. But as far as pitch is in terms of sales, I think it's such a disrespectful way to even think of sales or think of your prospect. Because a pitch is something you do to someone. A pitch is something that's the idea of a pitch is to strike the other person out, right? Not to equip them, not to help them, but to get something over on them. That's a pitch. Now, when people say it, that's not really what they mean. Okay. Yet it still has that meaning. Okay. You're gonna pitch a customer? No. How about you're gonna present to a customer, or you're going to share an idea with a customer? Because sometimes we say, well, it's just semantics, and sometimes things are just semantics, but other times semantics are very important, because when you use a word, it's not so much just what other people think of the word, it's what it means to you when you think of the word. And if you believe your idea, that your purpose is to pitch that person, that's a whole lot different than if your idea is to serve that person. In an elevator pitch, when they say that, that's sort of, it's an I focus. This is what we do. And an elevator pitch tends to take a while to say. In place of that, I would say a benefit statement is much better. But even that, there's a time and place for it. And so when someone says, when you introduce yourself to someone somewhere and you ask them what they do, because you want your focus to be on them, right? And they're going to tell you what they do, and and they're going to ask what you do. And your benefit statement might be, well, we help people, buy their perfect dream home, or we help people sell their homes at so and so. But that's fine when it's but right now, when you first meet that person, don't even do that. Don't even do that. Just say you're a realtor, right? Because they don't care right now. At this point in time, when they first meet you, their interest in you and in what you do can be summarized in 3 words: they don't care. Okay, so go back to them and ask them questions, what I call feel-good questions, such as, oh, how did you get started selling copying machines, or whatever they do? And that's a question most people are never asked, how they got started in their business, right? Most people instead are trying to sell them on their hat, right? You got people meeting each other, selling each other hats, all right? But instead, you're asking them about themselves. What do you enjoy most about what you do? Right? Just, it's a feel-good question. It makes them feel good about themselves. What I call the one key question is to ask, Dave, or Mary, I always love connecting good people with other good people. Tell me, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good client for you? Mm-hmm. Or if they're not in sales, but maybe they're in management, or they're the CEO of a company, or they're whatever. It doesn't matter. It might be, I always love connecting good people with other good people. Tell me, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is someone you'd like to meet? Again, it's an other focus. And that's what, but the benefit really when you think about it, is just what you're going to be able to do for that person. And it has nothing to do with real estate. It has everything to do with, if it's a home you're selling to someone, the home is a commodity, and helping them buy a home is fine for what it is, but that's certainly a feature. The benefit, of course, is that this is where they're going to raise a family and create memories and have security and safety and have their piece of the American dream and all those wonderful things. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always like anybody else. It's certainly nothing new that we want to speak in terms of the benefits they would receive by doing business with you, as opposed to the feature of such. But we also want to make sure that we're even in the right place and the right time in the relationship to even begin talking about that.
Yep. No, I loved how you framed those networking conversations, right, around being other focused, because so many times as an agent, there's a lot of real estate agents. There's 1.5 million of us around the country, and prospecting and networking is part of the hardest part of the job. And the training around how to do that is really, really simple. If you just listen to Bob, it's this idea of other focus. It reminds me of the story from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, where he has a conversation, and the next day the lady goes and talks about what a wonderful conversationalist Dale Carnegie was, and he recalled saying 2 or 3 sentences the entire conversation, right? It was all about her and her gardening, right? And so I love
exactly, absolutely. And again, this is just human nature, and the key is to really authentically care when you're asking that person. Yep. You're not doing it as a way to manipulate another human being. You're doing it as a way because you are truly interested in that person, and they can tell. They know. Not that some people can't fake it pretty well for a while, but it's pretty hard to sustain.
No, it's great. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about Adam Grant for a second, Bob. So for those who don't know, Adam Grant is a famous organizational psychologist, and he wrote a best-selling book based on the research they did on this topic of being a giver. And so basically what the research looked at was they categorized people into 3 different buckets. There's givers, which we're talking about right now. There's takers, which is the opposite, people who are just looking to take from relationships. And then in the middle, there's these matchers, these quid pro quo people that are, hey, Bob, do this for me, I'll do this for you. And what's really cool is they wanted to look at those 3 groups and research which group is more successful. And the good news for all of us is that the most successful group is the giver, but the downside is he actually breaks givers up into 2 groups, and the second group, which he classifies them as selfless givers, aren't very successful, and it's because they are at risk of being taken advantage of. So I would be really interested to hear from you, Bob. How do you view, or how do you protect against the downside of being a giver and potentially being taken advantage of?
Yeah, and I was very glad that Adam covered that, because there's a very obvious question that's brought up whenever you talk about giving, right? Whether it's in the course of the books, or the course of nice guys, nice gals, nice people finish last, and here's the thing, and I would say, just like him, nice guys, nice gals, nice people, do they finish first? Yes. Do they finish last? Yes. Mm-hmm. Because it depends on how they're going about it. Okay. And when people say, well, so Bob, can you ever be, by being a go-giver, can you be taken advantage of? Well, but anyone can be taken advantage of, but if you find yourself being taken advantage of, and I'm not talking about once or twice, I mean, that's going to happen. That's part of life. I mean, as a pattern, okay, that you're being taken advantage of, it's not because you're a giver. It's because you're doing things in such a way that you're creating the context for people to take advantage of you. Okay, so there's nothing about being a go-giver by definition. There's nothing about being a go-giver that says that you should be taken advantage of, or that's congruent with being taken advantage of, that says you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not. Being a go-giver simply means that you understand the value of focusing on bringing immense value to others. But if you ever feel as though someone is a, what we would call a go-taker. And Adam said take, he said givers, matchers, and takers. And we always said that, the opposite of a go-giver is not a go-getter. We love go-getters because go-getters get things done. They take action. And, we all know that you could have the greatest idea, nicest thoughts, best intent, but unless action's put into the mix, nothing's going to happen. So we want people to be both go-getters, people of action, and go-givers, people who are absolutely laser focused on providing value to others. We don't want people to be go-takers. Those are the people who are focused only on themselves. And they tend to be not nearly as successful as they think they deserve to be. And, not that they can't at times have successes, they absolutely can, but it's difficult to sustain, to be sustainably successful, because they're basically in it by them, not just for themselves, but by themselves. So being a go-giver, focusing on, bringing immense value to others, is a very principle-based way of tapping into human nature. The fact is, people are much more likely to do business with you when they trust you and when they know you have their best interest at heart. But that should never mean that you allow yourself to be taken advantage of, to knowingly be anybody's doormat or a martyr. So that's something that's very, very important to be aware of. Now, when you say no to people, as you'll often have to say, you do it in a way that's kind, you do it in a way that's tactful, but you stay very congruent with your principles and with your values.
Yes, no, I love that. My follow-up question was going to be how do we say no? Because I do see a lot of our givers kind of get into that, or they have a hard time saying no. But
so let's talk about that, because that's very, very important to be able to do that. Now, if you feel it's someone trying to take advantage of you and you have to say no, you can just say, I appreciate the question. It's not something I would feel comfortable with. Okay, if you can do that, fine. If they ask you to explain why not, then you explain why. You do it in a you do it in a tactful way, but you certainly do it in a way that you respect your boundaries. But let's also talk about another way of saying no, and that's to something benevolent that you just don't want to do. Because that's also important. Because as you get more and more successful, more and more people are asking you to do more and more things, and you can't. You can't without taking your focus away from what you need to be doing in serving the people you need to be serving. So we've got to be able to say no in a way that both honors the other person while respecting our own boundaries. Now, there are different ways people have been taught to do this. And while I never want to in any way appear disrespectful to another person's way of doing it, I do sort of feel it's important to point out a couple of the ways in which I don't think are productive, and then maybe show another way that I think is more. And then I always leave it to everyone to utilize what they think would work best for them. It's sort of become, it's gotten into the lexicon over the last 10 years that the phrase "no" is a complete sentence. And people hear that, and I've seen it at seminars where people said "no" is a complete sentence, and people nod their head in empowerment. Oh yeah, I'm just going to tell people no. And I think to myself, really? Is that what you're going to do? Let's say, for example, we're going to use something very generic, and some of you probably heard me use this before, and so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. Well, I am repeating myself. I'm apologizing for repeating myself if you heard me before. And so let's say you're being asked to serve on a committee. That's a very generic, benevolent type of thing, because they're asking you because obviously they think you'll add value to it. And that's a good thing. It's a compliment. But you just don't want to serve on this committee. Okay. And again, being a go-giver is not about being self-sacrificial. Unless there's a life and death reason for doing so, if it's not something you want to do, don't do it. If it's not the best use, highest use of your time, don't do it. Now, the person asks you to serve on the committee. No is a complete sentence, so you just say no. Or no, I don't want to. first, it's kind of rude. It's very rude. Secondly, you're probably going to insult this person and turn them off from wanting to really be involved with you in any way, including maybe asking you to do other things with them that you may want to keep that door open for in the future. But the main reason that you're not going to just say no, and that being a complete sentence, is because it's incongruent with your values of treating a person kindly and respectfully. So
Right.
I just don't think that's a good. I think it sounds like one of those real motivational. No, is a nah. Nah. Then another way we're taught is maybe, well, just tell a little fib. I would, but I'm too busy. Well, there are a couple of challenges there. One is that it's not that you're too busy, it's that you don't value doing the thing you're being asked to do as much as you value not doing the thing that you're being asked to do. None of us have time. We make time for those things we value more than other choices. So a couple things happen here. First, if you say I would, but I don't have time, this person might say, okay, well, I'll call you back in 3 months and see how things are then. Now you're stuck into having to repeat that process. But also, when they answer your objection about time in a way compelling enough that you understand that time is not an issue at all, now you're in real trouble. Because now you've either got to explain and come clean that it's not that you don't have time, you just really don't want to do it. And that person's going to respect you a little less, and you're going to feel kind of yucky about it, pardon the technical term. Or in order to save face, you've got to now accept the gig. You've got to now do that thing you don't want to do, which again, I don't think that's a good idea. So here's a way you can say no. And if you'll just practice this a couple times, I'm telling you, it will set you free for the rest of your life. And that is, again, they ask you to serve on a committee. And you can say this a couple different ways, so I'll do a couple different versions. But basically, it's thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to be asked. Boom, that's it. Or you can say, oh, thank you. While it's not something I choose to take on, please know I'm very, very grateful that you would think to ask me. Okay, those are now what you've done is you've again honored that other person. Okay, you thanked them. You've let them know how honored and grateful you are. But you also let them know with what you said that it's not something you're going to do. What you didn't do is you didn't give them an excuse. You didn't give them an objection, if you will, to hang their hat on and be able to overcome, right? So you've really, now, if for whatever reason, this person's one of those feelings or you've trained them in the past that you can be kind of browbeat into doing things, right? And this person says, well, but oh, come on, we really, just don't argue with them. Don't interrupt them. Just have a look of peace and tranquility on your face, a pleasant smile. When they're finished speaking, you pause a quick second, and then you just say, well, again, thank you. So I'd rather not, but again, thank you so much for asking.
No, that is absolute gold, especially for, main audience here is real estate agents. And the thing about real estate agents is they're well networked. So they do sit on a lot of boards.
Of
so
course, absolutely.
Right. And they're also brokers. And by definition, they are go-getters, and they have a great knack for figuring out problems, solving them, and getting them out of the way. And right. So a realtor ends up on a board, and it's kind of a running joke. If you go out and if part of your network thing is to join boards and get involved, but be careful, they're going to make you president.
Right, that's true. And here's the thing, and you bring up such a great point, because sometimes it's appropriate to say yes, and that's fine too. But always, as Dan Kennedy used to ask, is what I'm about to do the highest and best use of my time? Right. And I think we need to ask ourselves that question. By all means, there are times to say yes, but when you are able to say no comfortably and effectively, you now leave yourself open to say yes to those things that you would choose to say yes to. And just one other quick thing, if I may. There are times when, depending upon the request and the relationship with that person where you would give them the reason, okay? Because it would be disrespectful not to. But I'm saying most of the time, and in situations such as we just discussed, there is no need to give an excuse. It is enough to respectfully and tactfully say no.
Sure, absolutely. No, that's great advice. Thanks for expanding on that kind of topic. That was
My pleasure.
great. Okay, so you and John had a new book come out last year in the Gogiver series, the Gogiver Influencer, which was another great read. So thank you for putting that one out into the world. For those who haven't read that one yet, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, and it's our favorite book in the series, and it's really something we felt that the time was right for, because really, when you think about it, influence is where it all kind of begins and ends, right? Because you can have all the, you have the greatest intent, and you can have such great traits about you. You can be hardworking and ambitious and kind and charitable and wonderful and even-tempered and creative and much, much more. But unless you can influence others, really move people to the correct and appropriate action, your chances for success, for stratospheric success, is really somewhat limited. On the other hand, when you are able to do this, you're really able to serve so many more people than you otherwise would. And if we look at what influence is, okay, we can look at it first on a very, very basic level, and then bring it out a little bit and expand on it for its true essence. When a basic definition of influence is simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That's influence by definition, but it's not its essence, right? It's its definition, but it's not its essence. The essence of influence is pull. Pull as opposed to push, as in, how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very, at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers, or what we would call genuine influencers, don't push. Instead, they pull. Pull is an attraction, right? Great influencers pull. They attract people first to their ideas, and only then to their, or first to themselves, only then to their ideas. Now, the question is, how? How does that pull manifest itself? How do we pull people toward ourselves? Well, the genuine influencer understands, and you brought up Dale Carnegie earlier, right? And what I believe in, that of course is also one of my favorite books, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And what I believe that Mr. Carnegie's underlying premise was in that book was one line. The whole book was brilliant, but one line really, to me, said it all. And that's where he wrote, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the genuine influencer, and this is whether, in this case, whether you're going to list a home or sell or show someone a home, they ask themselves questions to make sure they're heading in the right direction. Okay, so such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals? How does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their wants, with their needs, with their desires? How does what I want this other person to do, how does it align with their values? What problems am I helping them to solve? How am I making their life better by being a part of it and by doing my job? And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully and intelligently and genuinely and authentically, again, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to that person's commitment to us and to our idea. And that's what John and I wanted to get across in the book. What we call, we gave the definition of influence, sure. Genuine influence is the ability to attain the results you want while helping that other person feel genuinely good about themselves, about the situation, and about you.
No, it's absolutely great. And I think, you mentioned the metaphor of, I think one of the secrets that you had in that book was about stepping in, listening and stepping into their shoes. And I think as a, obviously we've got a lot of real estate agents on the call. I think when our agents can step into people's shoes and express that genuine empathy for what our buyers and sellers, our investors, our renters are going through, I think it's a game changer. So Bob, here's what we're going to do for everybody that's on the call that wants to read the Gogiver Influencer. Here's all you have to do: shoot me and Jessica an email and say, I want the Gogiver Influencer, and the company's going to purchase you a copy. So a little fun for being on the call and sticking with us here. Couple of rapid fire questions, Bob. I know your time is running short here. And
it's not. I don't have anywhere. Okay. When you said that,
we want to be mindful of it nonetheless. So
my mind went to, I got to tell you, my mind went to the Tonight Show back in the day. I think either Jay Leno or maybe Johnny Carson was the host. Most of you are probably too young to even remember Johnny Carson being the host. But somebody, I think it was Steve Martin who came on. And it was the end of Steve Martin's interview when Johnny Carson said, well, Steve, I know you've got to go. It was before the break. I know you've got to go. And Steve said, no, I don't. I have nowhere to go. I get nothing to do. So I'm sorry. That just, it came to me when you said that, and I couldn't resist. And I know I'm no Steve Martin.
No, well, hey, if you want to stay on and wrap for another couple hours, we'll be happy to do that. Trust me, this is that whole kind of mastermind idea. It's like you're certainly, I think for a lot of us, one of those people that if you could sit around a table with five people and hang out with and have you're high on that list. So be careful what you ask for, Bob. So here's my question. So
fire. Okay.
With the pandemic, right? We have what I have noticed is that it really feels like the uncertainty, not understanding like the new normal and not understanding when we're going to go back to our original way of life. It seems to be like that uncertainty is the trigger for most people's anxiety. So I just would love to hear from your perspective, any advice on dealing with uncertainty?
I think it always comes back to, and the Stoics certainly spoke of this, a couple thousand years ago, and that is trying to make sure that you understand and acknowledge the difference between what you can control and what you cannot control. And try as best as possible, and it's not always easy, to give up attachment to what you cannot control. Now, this should never be misconstrued or misinterpreted to think that we shouldn't always try to do the best we can with what we've got. And what we can control, absolutely. And this is what you talked about earlier, about how when there was no obviously buying or selling going on, so you couldn't control that, okay? But what could you control? You could control the ability to add value to your prospects, customers, and clients in certain ways. And that's what you did. You kept in touch. You kept them in mind. You looked at what you could do for them, even though it had nothing right now to do with buying or selling a home. It meant that when funds needed to be raised for a merchant in the community, you got together and you did those things that you could control. Who was the admiral, and I am so sorry for not remembering his name, and he was featured in Good to Great by Jim Collins. He was the highest commanding officer in Vietnam. He was a prisoner of war. He was tortured like 23 times during his stay, and he was asked about, I'm so sorry for not remembering.
Yeah, I'm blinking too. I know what you're talking about. I've read the book.
But he talked about the fact that the people who didn't make it were the people who were overly optimistic. They kept saying, oh, we'll be out by Christmas. Oh, well, then Christmas would come and go. We'll be out by Easter. Easter would come and go. Oh, we'll be out by come and go. They lost hope. What he said is the people who were able to survive, they dealt with the truth as it was. Okay, they understood, they acknowledged it, they dealt with it. Now, again, that didn't mean you just accepted it as there was nothing you could do. No, but you worked within those truths. You worked with it. You kept faith that things were going to work out. Absolutely. but you didn't make emotional demands or what would be called attachment on what you simply can't control. Yeah, I go back to, and I've done this several times, going back to reading one of my favorite books on this, is the Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment, both by Michael Singer. I'm so good with names, and for some reason I'm forgetting names in the last 5 minutes. By Michael A. Singer, two of the best books I ever read, and you can get his audios and same thing. The Surrender Experiment and the Untethered Soul. And when I listen to him, it just reminds me to acknowledge that which I cannot control and lose attachment to that, while taking what I can control and utilizing that to live in the solution. Now, none of this is to say it's easy, right? I mean, we're human beings, and so it's something that we struggle with. But to the degree that we can do that, that's the degree that we will have that peace of mind.
Hey, Bob, this is interesting. So, it's James Stockdale.
James. Yes. Oh, Admiral Stockdale. I am so sorry that.
This is what's so cool about our organization, just as a quick plug, is that you're in good company when everybody's listening to this, and I'm getting a bunch of text messages from agents who know the answer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. Bob, it also reminds me of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, right? How did certain Nazi concentration camp survivors make it? They had belief, but they were very stoic about it, right? They're very pragmatic about the reality, but they had belief, and they had some higher reason for living and surviving the Holocaust. And I think in Stoicism is something we talk about a lot, but I'm hoping for the best, but planning for the worst, and kind of living in that place that you control. That's such a great answer. Thank you, Bob. A couple more. If you could go back and share one piece of advice with your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
This is the easiest question you could ever ask. I would go back to young Bob Burg, and I would say, young Bob Burg, shut up and listen, because you don't know near what you think you know. And to paraphrase a quote often attributed to Mark Twain, though there's no evidence that he ever actually said it, but so many wise things they sound Twainian, and so they're credited to Mark Twain. But it would be, and half the things that you're absolutely positively sure you do know just ain't so. So when I was 20 years old, and I'd say up to the time I would say 24, 25 years old, I just thought I had it figured out. I thought I understood human nature. I understood how the world worked. I understood this. I understood that. And boy, was I wrong. And it wasn't until I began to be a student of life, a student of sales, a student of human nature, a student that I began to get over myself and begin to learn and grow and improve.
Self-awareness is interesting that way, isn't it? The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Isn't that the case?
No, that's awesome advice. Okay, Untethered Soul, I have not read, so that's going on my list. Do you have any other, outside of your best-selling books, of course, any other recommended books?
Yeah. Let's see. I would say some really good books. One is Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a very big book. You'll read it a few pages at a time, but boy, is it absolutely powerful, by Daniel Kahneman. Principles by Ray Dalio, where it's a book about leadership, is really a book about understanding yourself. This book by John Marks Templeton, Worldwide Laws of Life. This is an oldie, but a goodie. And he goes into all the world's religions and philosophies, and it's sort of it's 200 eternal spiritual principles a week at a time. Now, Mr. Templeton was the late Mr. Templeton was the founder of the Templeton Fund, a very, very successful business person, and boy, did he just wow, just really put it out there. Another great book, and this is one most people haven't heard of, but those of us who have, we brag about it all the time and recommend it. It's by a gentleman by the name of Harry Browne, Browne. He actually is a New York Times best-selling author of a number of books. How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. He wrote books on economics and politics and so forth. But he was also a master salesperson and really one of the nicest guys I ever met. The world lost a good one when we lost him. But he wrote a book based on, well, he wrote a couple of manuscripts that he never meant to publish, apparently, because when he died about 10 years ago, his widow, Pamela, found these two short manuscripts on his hard drive. One was about human nature, and the other was about how human nature applies to selling. And so I think he was just using this for his training of his sales team. But she reached out to someone who's a direct response marketer who published the book, and it got so. And they titled the book "The Secret of Selling Anything." But really, what this book was it was a treatise basically on understanding and respecting and working within human nature, and really, and how, if you know that, you can sell. You know, the secret of selling anything. What was the secret? He gladly tells you at the beginning. It's find out what people want and help them get it. You know, I mean, there's nothing more to it than that. I wrote a blog article on the book. If you go to Burg, BURG.com/blog, and just write in either Harry Browne, Browne, in the search, or I think if you write in The Secret of Selling, that will probably take you to where I review the book and you can get it. And it's one of those, now, by the way, it was written in the 1960s, okay? So please understand I got to know him personally for a while. He was not in any way a sexist or a chauvinist, but a lot of the writing is, you know, those traditional, the Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, you know, roles and so forth. So please just don't be offended, if you don't mind, by that. Of course, in that book, a car also costs $1,000. So, again, it's outdated in terms of that, but the actual principles involved are just absolutely gold.
No, it's great. You actually, a couple years ago, we had a conversation and you recommended this one, and I went and found a copy, and it's actually on our shelf in our shared book library. So if anybody wants to grab that one, it's available. I know a few of our agents have read it. Well, that's awesome. Bob, we had one question come in from an agent that I thought was really cool. So I'm going to ask you this one. What was a response from a reader that has meant the most to you?
So we've been very fortunate with a lot of the responses. I think when people tell us that they have their son or daughter reading the book, that I think John feels the same way about it as well. That's something we both take as a very, very special compliment. But you know, people telling us, and I think of one reader in particular, who during the downturn had back in, I think, 2008, had gotten the book, and his business, like all his competitors, had gone downhill. He got the book and he realized his focus was in the wrong place. So he started asking, how can I give more value, not less? And again, as you know, giving value, and value is always in the eyes of the beholder, of the other person. It doesn't have to cost money. It's the different things you do. It's your excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, appreciation, problem solving, that extra step. And he said his business, you know, just went through the roof, and you know, and he was in a downturn. And you know, so again, it's those kinds of emails and feedback that just is so meaningful. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can tell you this one. I give my I share book recommendations with my wife all the time, and she actually took that one and read it and loved it. So that's about the highest praise I can give you, is the
please tell her I said thank you.
And wife read a book, right? So that's great. Bob, where if people want to connect with you, where can they go to connect with you or learn more?
Best place is Burg, BURG.com. And they can scroll down, and there's lots of resources there, including my twice-a-week video blog that we put out called Influence and Success Insights. And if they scroll down to the, I think to the very bottom of the, I should know this, I guess, to the very bottom of the page, they can find me on all the various social media sites. Wherever you hang out, there's a chance I hang out there too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wendy actually is our Chief Operating Officer, and she was sharing with Bob beforehand that she is a often user of the video blog series. So highly recommend that. Also,
can I throw out one quick thing, Scott?
Yeah.
There was a video blog this morning that I received from Bob, and it was talking about spreading smiles, as things are contagious. I just thought it was a really nice message. But what I took away from it was focus on your blessings, commit to a positive mindset, and smile, and it leads to positive outcomes, not because it changes the other person, but because it changes you. And I thought that was just super impactful. So thank you, Bob, for sharing that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Bob, any parting thoughts for us?
You know, about 40 years ago, I had been in sales for a couple of years. And, you know, I had learned sales, I'd studied sales, I was doing well. And I went to work for another company that sold a high-end product. And at first I was doing well, and then I fell into a slump. And boy, can that be discouraging. And what I hadn't realized, the reason for the slump, was there was a problem. That problem, of course, was me. And I just hadn't realized it. So I remember going back to the office one day after a non-selling appointment. It was not supposed to be non-selling. It was supposed to be selling, but it wasn't, because of my own ineptitude, that the person did not purchase the product, and it's a product that would have helped him. And so not only did he not get the benefit of the product itself, I didn't get the benefit of helping him, and I also didn't get a commission that day. And so it was, instead of a win-win, it was a lose-lose. And I remember going back to the office, and I must have been sitting around just looking rather disgusted at myself. And there was a guy who came over. He was a much older guy. Again, this is almost 40 years ago. So when I say a much older guy, I mean, he was probably my age now, right? Just an old, decrepit guy. No, but he was a much older guy. And I think he saw me as Joe, right, in the story that would be written years later. And, you know, he saw me as that young and up and coming, you know, aggressive, ambitious, and had potential, but whose focus was in the wrong place. And he said to me, can I give you, and he was one of these guys, by the way, and I'm sure you've met these people. He didn't say much, but whenever he did say something, it was always profound. And he said, Burg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Burg, can I give you some advice? And I said, absolutely, please do. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And that's when it hit me. That's when it hit me that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as that is. No. Great salesmanship is always about the other person. It's the value you can bring to the life of another human being. It's how that other person's life will be better just by the very virtue of you having been part of it. And I think that when we approach sales that way, and I know that's exactly how you all approach sales, I can tell just from speaking with you, I think then we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I couldn't have thought of a way to say it any better than that. That was absolutely fantastic. Bob, gosh, this was just so much value, and we are so appreciative of your time and sharing with us. And I can only imagine, having written the Gogiver, and putting those words out into the world, that there has been a lot of pressure for your actions to be commensurate with the words and really living those values. But I have to say that, you know, in every interaction I've ever been able to have with you, you truly are a go-giver, and you those words are not just words, they're actions that you take every day. And so thank you for your thought leadership, and thank you for spending some time with us, and we wish you the best.
Thank you all. I wish you all much, much success. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob.